Hello and welcome to More Bible, the official podcast of Reformation Covenant Church. In Jesus' high priestly prayer, he asked that his Father would sanctify his people in truth, and then affirmed, "Your word is truth." So in seeking to be a means to answering our Lord's Prayer, in each episode, pastors and church officers, and today church members, will take questions from church members and provide answers from the Bible so that our people can grow in a deeper and more faithful understanding of and application of God's Word to their daily lives. I'm Brewer, the associate pastor at RCC, and I'm here today not with an elder, nor the son of an elder, but Brad Hangarter, who is well-loved in our church and a longtime member of Reformation Covenant Church, to talk about a subject that we introduced actually in our last two podcasts on the issue of parenting in preparation for our parenting class, specifically the question of disciplining and raising children who have really aged out of spanking, aged out of the more traditional things that we talk about when we talk about discipline. In preparation for this, I'm just going to read one short passage to kind of get us on track. It's from Ephesians chapter 6. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So, Brad, we're doing this parenting class in a couple months now, and we spent some time talking about various things. Matt and I did a couple weeks ago. A question that we actually got, not in related to this Sunday school, but before, but a topic that comes to mind for a lot of parents is the question of discipline, and we talk a lot about that. We've taught on it. It's been a regular topic of conversation at RCC for a long time, but generally when we think of discipline, we think of the little years, the younger years. Parents who are aging out of that, it seems, at least this one who asked this question, want to know a little bit more about how to think about how to discipline their children, how to raise their children, how to train their children, but specifically the disciplines piece, once they get past spanking. Spanking is not the only tool in the tool belt, and eventually it becomes really kind of an inappropriate tool at the age of the child. And you are the proud father of 4 children, and 3 of them here at RCC. One of them is a deacon, one of them is a deacon assistant, and one of them is leading our youth Bible study and very involved in ministry. And so it seems like you're kind of the person that people might want to talk to about this. And I thought it would be good to get your thoughts on this question. I'm going to sort of bounce it to you and ask you the kind of general topic and let you take it where you want to go. But maybe the general one here is, how did you and Carolyn think about discipline once your children started getting older?
Well, that's a question that might be missing the mark a little bit. You probably talked about this a lot in the past with Matt. You lay the foundations when they're young. Mm-hmm. And my experience and observation only is if you don't do that, it's really hard once the boys' testosterone kicks in and whatever women get, estrogen or whatever, it's hard to get them on track. Mm-hmm. So my thinking about this, since you asked me to come in and talk with you, was a lot about those foundations that we laid. Mm-hmm. And at the risk of repeating some of what you guys have probably already talked about, when we came here, I was from a Baptist background and had no training from anybody about raising children. And our son, Brian, at the time was about 4-ish, and now he's 39. So one of the first things that happened in the parking lot was Brian tried to beat up Michael Lortz, who was about 4 years older. And my idea of child training was, well, let him do it because he'll get clocked, and then he'll learn not to do it. So Michael's dad, Howard, talked to me about it, and I gave him my theory, and he said, no, that's not right. So within a week, he and our deacon at the time, Roy Garrett, came over on a Saturday morning when I was working out in the front yard, unannounced, stopped by and said, "Hey, we need to talk about this a little bit." And they gave me a little booklet, which I can't remember the name of. And that kind of set me on a trajectory of, no, you don't just let the law of the jungle apply. And then I read a book by Fugate, What the Bible Says About Child Training.
Mm-hmm.
And that became the basis for our discipline in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And then an adjunct to that was Pam Forrester's If-Then chart.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did things like, for example, we moved out in the country so we could have animals, so that all the kids had chores that they were required to do. And I set up some things for the boys to make them become men.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole time they were growing up, I said, I'm trying to get these guys so when they're 18, they're men and they can go out on their own and they can unapologetically and confidently be Christians wherever they go. They'll have answers to any questions that people might have. They'll be prepared for temptation and they'll persevere and succeed. So those were some of the things that we did. For example, I made a list of all the things I wanted the boys to learn. So I had Boy Scouts and some things like that. They didn't have that. So I did things like use a hatchet, shoot a gun, build a fire, tie a square knot and a bowline and a double half hitch. And I had a big list of stuff, some first aid things like that. The other big thing that occurred was their grandpa. So their grandpa, Silvers, Carolyn's dad, was a great man, very godly. And he got involved in the kids' lives early on, and particularly after he retired, he took up the homeschooling function of math, science, and then Carolyn's mom took up the duties of grammar and spelling and writing. And Len was a type of guy that didn't put up with back talk or excuses. He would give them an assignment and he would say, "This is due next week," and it was due next week. And he used a lot of the methods that help people really learn. For example, figure out this math problem or this algebra problem or this calculus problem, and then tell me why you solved the problem that way. So he had high expectations, and he was the type of man that you didn't fool around with. Mm-hmm. So the result of all that stuff was that the boys were sensitive enough to know they should be obedient. Mm-hmm. They were trained that you don't disobey dad or there's consequences. And they knew that they have to do it. And they apparently had enough trust where they thought, well, I guess these are good ideas for them to pursue. So there never was, that I can remember, once they hit about 15, 16, any discipline issues that I can remember. Now, Kenny reminded me a few months ago that we had an argument about something, and I can't really remember it very well, but he does because he remembers everything. So in that regard, I don't have a lot to offer because they just obeyed. Mm-hmm. So I think we're done with our interview. But I would just say on some of that background stuff, I really embraced Christian Reconstructionism pretty strongly. And I did a lot of this bifurcation where I said, well, you've got the effeminate Baptistic, pietistic people, where one of the churches I went to, for example, the women ran the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, you've got this masculine Christianity that I think the Puritans represented and that the Reconstructionists represented, and a lot of the guys I was reading. And I did not want my boys to become effeminate. Mm-hmm. So I was pretty afraid of like the whole homosexual thing, because more and more people I knew were becoming homosexual and they were having problems with that in their families. And I said, I want to make my boys masculine. Mm-hmm. So hence, the duties that we gave them, the hard work that we made them do. So, for example, again, we built our own house, and Brian was my right-hand man. And then as the boys got older, Kenny and John, they did more and more and learned how to use the power tools and climb a ladder and use the nail gun and make things plumb, square, and level. And they saw me do it, and they saw their grandpa do some of that, and they just did it. So we structured things to build character, to make them manly men, to realize that you have to push hard for a goal and that things don't come easy, and that you have to quote Luther, I guess, pray like everything depends on God and work like everything depends on you. You have to work hard to reach goals, and you don't let things throw you off course. So those are some of the thoughts I have. I don't know what additional questions you might have.
We can. Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things you were saying, and I've heard Doug Wilson say things like this, and it sounds like y'all were operating on this principle, whether you had heard Doug say this or not, but that discipline is meant to lead to freedom.
Yep.
The point of discipline is not to discipline in the sense of it's not to just inflict pain or to be vindictive or to be retributive. The point of discipline is aimed towards empowering the child to have freedom.
Yes. So to add to that, going back to the Fugate book, and also our church went through with the young adults, well, we were all young adults then, a set of talks and questionnaires and readings. I think it was called, it was a child training curriculum. And it painted a picture of a family, and it was trying to fight against the idea that a family is the family's holding hands and the child's in the middle, to say that's not the right picture. The family's holding hands and Jesus Christ is in the middle. And so we're all here to serve Jesus Christ together as a family. And so whenever I would discipline, I would remember that the purpose of this is not to get back at my kids, to keep them from irritating me, from getting some work done. It was always, we told you not to sass your sister, and we told you that, and we said if you did, you'd be punished, and now you did it, so you're going to be punished. And then it was a very kind of a cold thing at that point, because it was the law. The law had been broken. Then you'd do the whole routine of you'd bring them by themselves in private. You'd say, okay, Brian, did we tell you not to sass your sister about watching this show or whatever it was? Yes. Okay, so we told you we'd punish you, so I'm going to punish you now. So drop your pants or whatever. And then I'd always make sure that I spanked them hard enough where they had a true cry. None of this fake crying. And you could tell.
Yes, this is an important point to people.
Yeah. And I had a special tool that I used, a special rod. And then, of course, they're crying, and you look at them and you feel pity. And then you just get down on their level and you hug them and you tell them that you love them and that you forgive them and that God loves them. And so now let's go out and try again. And so that kind of clarity where it wasn't me, I'm a representative of God. God puts me in that office, put that in quotes, as the father to enforce these rules so that they learn how to be obedient their whole lives. And so it became a thing where I'm a pretty risible person, but I don't ever remember losing my temper with my kids because it was very clear. It was formulaic. I'm big on formulaic Christianity, honestly. It was, okay, here's this rule. Did you break the rule? Yes. Now you get the punishment. Now you get the forgiveness. Now you get the love. And then you're okay. You move forward. And because that was in place, and because I knew it was a requirement I believe that God had for me, it wasn't my own idea. It wasn't Carolyn's idea. It wasn't just because we think it's cool, we were able to do it consistently. And it really helped Carolyn too when I was at work. And the if then chart really helped as well. And I think I remember that we actually asked the kids sometimes. So I forget what it was. If you're told twice to, I don't know, unload the dishwasher, what's your punishment? And they would actually say, well, you should have to load it up the next night or the next 2 nights. And so we helped them design their own punishments for some of that on that if-then chart, if I remember right. So those are some of the main things I remember.
Do you remember when you stopped spanking?
Yeah, it was pretty much puberty, especially, the Missy grew up quickly like a lot of girls do. And there's no way I was about to give her the rod once she started looking more like a young woman instead of a little girl. And so that was, I don't remember what we did exactly, but again, she was very compliant. And frankly, all the kids were. When I compare them to a lot of kids, they were very compliant, I think. So she was. So I didn't really, not a lot came later.
Once you move past spanking, what would be, when y'all disciplined, what would that look like?
See, that's the thing I said earlier. I don't really remember something big, because we did give them a lot of liberty. And things like, what are you going to watch? Well, we pretty much controlled that. So they didn't get to decide, well, we're going to watch some crazy R-rated movie and we caught them, and so now you're in big trouble. And along those lines, one of the things that I wanted to do, coming from a teetotaling background as a Baptist, was I introduced the boys to alcohol very young. I mean, really young. You want some of my beer? Do you want some of my wine? Obviously, they had it every Sunday. And I allowed them to have more if they wanted more. As they got older, they got to have more so that it wouldn't be a big shock. Because that was one of the areas when I was a young man that I went wild on. And part of it was because I was a pagan, but part of it was maybe because, I can finally get drunk without anybody bothering me.
Yes.
So we wanted to introduce that over time. And I also felt like, whether, people may disagree, that it was part of becoming a man, at least in our Reformed culture, you drink a little bit. So let's learn about that. And, maybe Brian knows that too well, but he definitely knows a lot about that stuff. I mean, none of the boys have I ever seen wobbly. I think I've been more wobbly than them.
Okay.
So I think they learned that pretty well.
Yeah. So, thinking about disciplining in the second decade, or once they begin to get into adulthood or basics of adulthood, so much of it depends on how you're doing it when they're young, the foundations that you're laying when they're young, and building off of that.
Yeah. You build a foundation. One of the stories Carolyn tells people is, my dad was was retired, and he was over at our mobile home before we built our house, and he was building a little cabinet, for a nice cabinet in our main bathroom. And just around the corner, Brian was working on homework, and he was about 8. And Carolyn said to him, Brian, you need to do X, I forget it was. You need to do your homework. You need to do your reading. And Brian just said, I don't want to. Well, my dad was not a professing Christian. And he, this whole homeschooling thing at the time was kind of a bizarre deal. So now it's like, okay, we got this face off. And Carolyn just said, it doesn't matter whether you want to or not, you have to do it. And then it doesn't matter whether you feel like it or not, but you have to do it. And then after about 3 or 4, Brian just started doing his homework. And if you know Brian, I think that's emblematic of how he is. If there's something that Brian needs to do, he doesn't sit around and moan about it. He just gets up and he does it. And I can't help but think that was part of the turning point for him, where he just knew, it's just what I do. It's got to be done. Don't drag it out. Just get up and do it.
Yeah.
So that was a training thing that paid a lot of fruit. Bore a lot of fruit.
You can pay in a lot of fruit too.
Pay me in fruit.
When you're boys were older and when Missy was older, did you ever? One of the things I'm curious about, and I think a lot of parents are, as their kids are getting older, the kinds of liberties that are bestowed. Um, was there ever a time where you had to rescind liberties?
I don't remember that. I think I gave them a lot of liberty. So, for example, the boys watched unedited when they were in their young teen to mid-teen ages, because you could go a spread of 8 years or so. A Band of Brothers. And there's a lot of swearing in there. And I remember there was one man in the church at the time who didn't like the fact that I let him watch it, because I think I let him watch it with some of their friends. But again, I just thought they're going to be exposed to this stuff. And it's not like we're saying, like I do this at home or
Right.
something. I say, hey, now they're going to use all these words and here's what they mean and I want you to use them. It was an exposure. So I think that by introducing them to those things, I didn't have to rescind it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I let them choose. I let them choose their own music. So at the time, I was more into classical, Baroque type stuff, and they listened to pop, and I didn't. And a lot of it was Christian. Some of it wasn't. So I just kind of let them. And I do think that I could have done a better job of monitoring what they listened to in terms of music and what they saw on the internet, because the internet was just kind of coming out. So I had put a filter on it that I forget who threw, but it was like, okay, I've got this filter, so I don't really have to worry about it. Well, it turns out I did, because there are ways to get through it. So that was, I fell down on the job on that. So I do think the vigilance on the media stuff is really important. And I'm glad, frankly, I don't have to worry about that, that the younger people do.
Well, I mean, I was actually just speaking with someone the other day about even since I was a young man, when I was, I think I was given like a Palm Pilot or something. And that was my first independent technology. But things have changed so much even since then, and the amount of access, and certainly something that parents of older children need to be aware of. Yeah. And if you're listening and you have older children, let this be unto you as a sign from the Lord that you need to do something about this, that you need to address it. And if you have young children, I would encourage you to begin thinking about how you want to address this with your children. The statistics are wild. Most children today are exposed, if I remember correctly, most children are exposed to pornography at the ages of between 5 and 7. So just because your children are young does not mean that they've not been exposed. And so to guard them with diligence, care, love on this issue especially is of the utmost importance for parents today, as access and technology and everything gets more and more available. Brad, one last question before we adjourn for today. And maybe just because I love the way you said it. They just obeyed, and I think that's the prayer of a lot of parents. It's if only our kids would just obey. I'm curious if you would have, so for parents who may have neglected or failed to lay that good foundation, if you would have thoughts on, okay, now their kids are getting into 10, 11, 12, that foundation's not laid. Do you have any thoughts about how they can think about and approach that?
I've thought about that quite a bit, because I've had some questions along those lines, and I haven't really been able to come up with a very good solution, because they're more independent minded the older they get. And if they're not on a rut of righteousness at that point in terms of obedience, I really don't know how you get them in there. So it's kind of a bleak thing. And I mean, I've asked Bo about it a little bit, and it sounds like he's helping people wrestle with that as well. And I really haven't heard a lot of techniques, call them, or formulas, to go back to what I was saying earlier, on how you would do that.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine, and this is from just my own memory as a young person, and because by the time they're that age, they have a level of independence, autonomy, agency that a 6-year-old doesn't have. It's not going to be as formulaic as these young children. You're dealing more with a fully formed personality.
For sure. I think that, as you get older, you also realize my dad isn't God, or my mom isn't God, or both. You see more of their flaws, and you realize, well, they don't know everything perfectly, and they have their own problems. And so why should they tell me what to do?
Right.
So it does get more difficult. One of the things I did want to bring up, which Kenny has brought to my attention before our youngest son, that one of the things he's seen in some of his friends who have wandered from their faith is that at dinner, we would often discuss issues, apologetic issues, call them. Why is Christianity right? What about evolution? What about communism, socialism? And any topic that would come up, I would have a discussion about it. And I'd try and set up an antithesis. Here's what communism brings. Here's what free markets bring. And here's why the Bible supports free markets in terms of the 10 Commandments, for example, and many other passages. And so if you don't address the hard questions and help them answer them, I believe they eat away at them and they weaken their faith. And so you want to give them confidence that they have the best answers available. Why? Because they have the true faith. And I wanted to build that confidence that we're Christians because God drew us, but he also drew us to the truth.
Yes. And
the other outfits don't have the truth. And along those same lines, Carolyn's dad was very, very, and I was in the medical profession, he was very careful to train the children about creation. So they read all these books together. They discussed it. They talked about random chance and genetic variation and getting something out of nothing. And I would use a lot of that training to talk about what little I know about presuppositionalism, that if you come from a random collision of molecules, and here you are, how do I know that anything you say or do, number one, has any meaning, and number two, if it makes any sense, and why would it? And so you knock down all those things that rise up against the truth. And we did that in a really, Kenny brought it up, that it was a fun time.
Yeah.
And it really helped him. And I didn't realize what we were doing at the time, but I'd been guiding a lot of training here at RCC about those issues. And I like to knock down the bad guys anyway. So it was fun to do it at the dinner table in a relaxed environment. So I think that helped them too, to have confidence.
Yes.
And then if you believe that God is the creator and he created you, and hey, by the way, he created your mom and dad in this family because of his providence, his sovereignty over all things, well, then maybe you ought to listen to them.
Yes.
They have that office or that position above you. So all those things, work together.
Yes.
And make a piece. And now I find myself going to my sons for advice because I respect their opinions so much.
Because you gave it to them.
Well, they've gotten it from other places as well.
Yes.
And added to what we tried to inculcate when they were little. So it's a wonderful reward. And I'm enjoying it all the time, and hopefully I can enjoy it for many more years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a good testimony to have, a wonderful testimony to have of God's faithfulness and God's covenant mercies to our children. And I hope to be able to enjoy the things that you're enjoying and with my kids. And I know many parents as well. That's all we've got time for today. We hope that the discussion has been helpful. If you have more questions about this or any other topic, please feel free to reach out to any of the elders, text me, or to email us at morebible@reformationcovenant.org. Again, that's morebible@reformationcovenant.org. Until next time, remember to make best use of the time God has given you for His glory in the life of the world. Goodbye.